Nyalche Chembo Toto Ningmi Shang, Donen Manam Chembo, Nyalcheta, Lankara Dargam Santo, Shermat, Tumba Tuche Chanla Kishom Sar, Nishan Roar Zerni Jangamsa, Jawar Tuji Yelaman, Jimmy Panzo Jala, Soran. Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching.
Today we continue our teaching on the Shurangama Sutra. Regarding the Shurangama Sutra, you should all remember what we covered before. The 5 aggregates, 6 sense spaces, 12 sense fields, and 18 elements. After discussing the 18 elements, we came to where Ananda asked the Buddha, "Didn't you say in many previous sutras that all phenomena arise from causes and conditions? All phenomena cease through causes and conditions? How is it that now you say it's neither due to causes and conditions nor natural? What does this mean?" Then the Buddha told Venerable Ananda, "Actually, what I taught before about dependent origination was for the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, for those on the small vehicle path. Now I'm teaching from the perspective of the ultimate truth, from the viewpoint of the first truth. From this perspective, neither arising through causes and conditions nor natural arising truly exists. If they don't exist, how do we explain the arising through causes and conditions?" Actually, this explanation is quite simple. The arising through the combination of the 4 elements has its principles, it has its reasoning. But what I'm saying about non-arising through causes and conditions and non-natural arising also has its reasoning. From a certain perspective, dependent origination can indeed be spoken of. This is within conventional truth, where phenomena indeed arise and cease through causes and conditions. But when we examine from the ultimate reality, the principle of combination through causes and conditions actually doesn't exist either. Whether we examine through the earth element, fire element, water element, or wind element, space element, and consciousness, when we analyze in this way, none are reliable. So let's proceed with our analysis. You should remember from our last class, we already finished explaining the principle of the earth element arising through causes and conditions. We completed that discussion. Today we'll discuss the fire element. Here the Buddha tells Ananda, "Fire has no inherent nature. It depends upon various conditions. Observe a household in the city that has not yet cooked. When they wish to prepare food, they hold a burning mirror in their hand and seek fire before the sun." Here it says, now let's analyze the fire element among earth, water, fire, and wind. We can also analyze the nature of the fire element. The fire element is actually without inherent nature. Without inherent nature also means in Tibetan and other sources, it's also called without essence. The fire element itself actually has no inherent self, no inherent essence, no inherent nature. It arises completely in dependence upon various causes and conditions. Actually, regarding arising through causes and conditions, just as we discussed before in other sutras, as long as something arises through causes and conditions, these phenomena cannot possibly have true inherent existence. All phenomena arise from conditions. They have no fixed nature of their own. If phenomena arise through causes and conditions, they definitely have no fixed nature. It's impossible for them to have one. What is the nature of fire? It arises in dependence upon causes and conditions, so it cannot possibly have its own essence. How does it lack this? Let's have him observe. Just observe a household in the city that hasn't yet cooked their meal. This household wants to prepare to cook. In the kitchen, they begin cooking with their stove. The chef starts cooking. At this time, before this, you must first make fire. Without fire, there's no way to do anything. Once I wanted to cook some noodles myself, but the gas stove, no matter how I tried, wouldn't light. There was nothing I could do. Then I thought, should I use the electric stove? but then I couldn't find the noodles either. It turned out someone was afraid of mice getting them dirty, so they locked them away in some unknown box. So I ended up eating nothing, no fire, no noodles. When I got back, I could only eat sampa. Some of us are like this too. When we want to cook, they hold a burning mirror. The burning mirror here should refer to a fire mirror, or what was previously called using sunlight. When we were small, we would always cut out the bottom of a bottle, then face it toward the sunlight. If you put relatively dry yak dung underneath, fire would immediately appear. It's a fire mirror, then using sunlight. When these two conditions are present, when sunlight shines here, then fire can begin to appear. It's like this, holding a burning mirror or copper mirror in hand, then before the sun using tinder, they can seek fire through such conditions. Actually, if we examine these conditions, it's impossible to obtain them in the way described below. The Buddha tells Ananda what is called combination is likewise the same. Just now, depending on the fire mirror, sunlight and tinder, without examination, it seems fire can appear. But when you truly examine it, this combination cannot be obtained. How can it not be obtained? Just as I and you, 1,250 monks, now form one assembly, though the assembly appears as one, if we examine its foundation, each has their own body, each has their own birthplace, family, lineage, and name. Here he gives a contemporary analogy. Ananda, what we call combination, is like me and you, 1,250 monks now gathered together. When we're gathered together, everyone considers us the Sangha community, the Sangha in harmony, united together. But this is just a way of speaking without examination. If we truly examine it, investigating its foundation, we 1,250 monks and Sangha community, if you truly seek and examine their foundation, if you observe, actually, each of the 1,250 has their own individual body. They're all separate. There's nothing combined. Moreover, each monk has their own birthplace, their own background. Some are, however, many years old. Some are elderly. Some are young, and so on. Each person also has their own caste, their own lineage, and their own name. In this case, what we call the harmonious Sangha community gathered together. But when you analyze each individually, indeed, each is separate. If each is separate, if there's no unity when each is separate, then combination is also impossible. In Madhyamaka, there are many methods of analysis. Now let's give an example. Like Shariputra, among our Sangha community, Shariputra is of the Brahmin caste. Venerable Uruvilva is of the Kashyapa lineage, and Venerable Ananda is of the Gautama lineage. Just from the aspect of caste, certainly their appearances are also different. For instance, regarding Shariputra, Shari, in our Tibetan, we also say Shaliwa. Sharao is a type of bird. That bird is the Shari bird, the Shari. The Shari is said to have particularly beautiful eyes, so Shariputra's mother's eyes were like that bird's eyes, particularly beautiful, round, and especially beautiful. Later, people named her Shari for this similar reason. He is Shari's son, so he's called Shariputra. In Indian tradition, many names are based on their mother's name. In Tibetan region and some places, there are also those who take their father's lineage as their family name. And that Venerable Uruvilva we mentioned earlier, his name translates to something like Papaya Grove. Venerable Papaya Grove, he also has some similar names. And what is he? He's of the Kashyapa lineage. Kashyapa is also called the turtle clan, turtle as in the animal turtle. This is actually from India, including Hinduism and the Vedic schools. Among them, they speak of the creator of the world having 7 great sages, one of the 7 great sages. So his later lineage is called the Kashyapa clan, the Kashyapa lineage. In Tibetan, it's just Kashya, without the pa syllable. I don't know if it was dropped or what. It probably should be there. He's of the Kashyapa lineage, like the Brahmin caste. And Venerable Ananda, Ananda is Gengawo. Gengawo means everyone rejoices. We translate this as joy and celebration, celebrating and rejoicing. Why? When he was born, his father had just heard that Shakyamuni Buddha had already attained Buddhahood. Everyone knows that Shakyamuni Buddha left home at age 29, then practiced austerities for 6 years by the Niranjana river. Finally, at 35 years old, Shakyamuni Buddha attained enlightenment at 35 and achieved realization at Bodh Gaya. When news of his enlightenment reached their family, Ananda had just been born. After his birth, later when he grew up, it should be when the Buddha was 55. That he began serving as attendant and continued until the Buddha's parinirvana at 80 or 81 years old. Was it then? Ananda served him for 25 years. When the Buddha passed into parinirvana, Ananda should have been in his 40s. He became the Buddha's attendant at 20 years old. He was the Buddha's youngest cousin. Actually, he was of the Gautama lineage. Gautama, actually, as we discussed in the root stanzas of the Middle Way, at the end it says the great sage Gautama. Nagarjuna has a final verse of homage. Gautama, in our Tibetan we call Godama, Godan de la Shangtsa Lo. Some Tibetan texts use Godan, 2 syllables. Some use Godama. It seems that non-Buddhists often address the Buddha as Godama in a particularly disrespectful way. Actually, Gautama seems to be the sugarcane lineage. Why is it called sugarcane? Previously, in the Sutra on the Buddha's past lives and other sutras, actually the entire origin of his family lineage seems to be that when a sage became old, finally unable to walk, his disciple placed him in a basket and hung it from a tree, then went to find food. While looking for food, a hunter saw this and thought it might be a bird or something, so he shot an arrow, causing blood to flow. Where his blood flowed, 2 sugarcane plants grew. Then these sugarcane plants were exposed to sunlight, and finally, after being exposed to sunlight, 2 children appeared, a boy and a girl. Later, this boy became known as the Sugarcane King. This is how the Shakya lineage began. Initially, he was called Godama. There's also this story. Later, it seems that girl became his first queen. So sometimes, regarding his entire history, whenever we discuss the wish-fulfilling treasury, it's also mentioned that humanity's earliest lineages also have mythical qualities. There are also some rather strange stories. So when we explain our world-honored one's lineage, if we were to explain it fully, some feel it's not particularly ideal. So non-Buddhists also often call him Godama, using his name directly like this. Initially called the Sugarcane clan or Gautama clan, but later, after Shakyamuni Buddha's enlightenment, it was called the Shakya clan. Because initially, during the time of the 5 monks at Deer Park, at that time the 5 monks, when they saw Shakyamuni Buddha coming, were all very disrespectful. "Ah, Gautama, you've come." Everyone was particularly disrespectful to him. But later they discovered that the Buddha had already achieved realization. So here we have Venerable Ananda, who is actually of the Gautama lineage, also called the Sugarcane clan lineage. This is what we just discussed. When we speak of combination, when we truly examine it, so-called combination doesn't hold up. The Buddha tells Ananda, if this fire nature exists through combination, when someone holds the mirror to seek fire from the sun, does this fire come from the mirror or from the tinder or from the sun? These 3, we just said this fire arises through the combination of such causes and conditions. If that's the case, when holding the burning mirror we mentioned earlier, the burning mirror mentioned before, sometimes to avoid repetition, some of these are all the same in Tibetan. This fire-making mirror, when facing the sun to seek fire, if fire is produced, does this fire come from the fire mirror or from the tinder or from the sun? I remember when I was small, generally all of us in Tibetan region, at the time I could basically remember matches were very, very rare. Then each person had a small pouch on their belt. According to their wealth, if they were wealthy, it would have some silver decorations. If they weren't wealthy, it was just that, what we call a flint steel, and also something called a firestone and fire tinder. The fire tinder is dried grass. All these were stored inside. I originally wanted to show you with a PowerPoint today. Now many people in Tibetan region, including for weddings, use them as decorations. Actually, they just add more silver to these. Originally, that thing, men generally carry 2 pouches on their body, one for fire-making equipment, fire-starting tools, and one for needles, thread, and such things. Generally, women carry what I can show you sometime. Those are specifically, nowadays women often use silver and gold to make those long hooks. Those are for when milking cows, they hang the milk bucket on their belt. It must have these 2 hooks like this. Then after hanging the milk bucket like this, it works. It won't fall down. Otherwise, both hands need to milk the cow, you know? Milking a cow is like this. Some milk very quickly. Later, this evolved and extended, made of silver, made of gold. Now many decorative items are like this. So that fire-making device, we could call it a lighter. It was the same when we were small. The flint, steel, and tinder, small pieces placed here. Then on top, there's a firestone. The firestone is white. Then you rub them together. When rubbing together, sparks scatter. When the sparks fall onto the tinder, then smoke begins to appear. When there's smoke, it immediately turns into fire. Then you add more other relatively dry materials there. Then if you blow on it, fire immediately springs up. It's similar to African methods. Basically the same form with minor differences. It was probably like this before too. Through tinder and the fire mirror we mentioned, the fire mirror is flint steel and firestone. They relied on sunlight to obtain fire. When obtaining fire, there might be some who previously relied on sunlight to obtain fire. When obtaining water, relied on moonlight to obtain water. There were such traditions in the past. So the Buddha asks, does this fire come from the mirror, or from the tinder, or from the sun? If it comes from the sun, it should be able to burn the tinder in your hand by itself. All the forests and trees along the way should be burned. He says, if it comes from the sun, after the sun's rays shine, the tinder in your hand can all be ignited. In that case, actually, when sunlight shines universally upon the entire earth, all along its path, including trees, forests, flowers, and grass, it passes through all of these. In that case, they should all be burned as well. This is also a kind of reasoning. If fire truly comes from sunlight, then sunlight can also contact other dry materials in the same way. With such contact, since it can burn tinder, then why don't other things, including trees and grass outside, also burn? This is indeed true, if it can burn, and sunlight also shines directly on other objects, then why don't they burn? This is one observation. From a second perspective, if you say it doesn't come from the sun, but from the fire mirror in your hand, then in that case, if it can emerge from the mirror and burn the tinder, why doesn't the mirror melt? In that case, if it comes from the mirror, if the mirror has burning properties, if it can burn tinder, then why doesn't its own essence burn? If you think this fire can burn, that tinder is something that can be burned actually, if it truly has the nature of fire, because it itself has already resided for a long time in this fire mirror, it itself always resides within its own essence. In that case, in such a short time, when rubbed against it, it burns the tinder, so why doesn't it burn itself? When you hold it in your hand, it still has no heat characteristics. How could it melt? He says when you hold the fire mirror in your hand, you certainly don't feel any hot nature. If that's the case, how could it be the same as its own essence burning? This also isn't the case, because when we hold the fire mirror in our hand, it's certainly not burning in nature. If it's not burning in nature, then its own essence cannot melt. If it cannot melt, why would it burn other tinder? This reasoning is a kind of counter-question to him. The second method of observation, the third aspect of observation. If fire arises from tinder, then in that case, why would you need the sun and mirror's light to connect before fire arises? If you say it's produced from the tinder, then why do you need to borrow the sun and the fire mirror's light, both needing to combine? You don't need them, because tinder can produce fire. If it produces fire, then you just need to take some tinder. Anywhere you are, you can produce fire. So now we don't dare use tinder mats anymore. If that were the case, it wouldn't need other conditions. Fire would arise directly from the tinder. In that case, this would actually be unreasonable. You observe carefully again. The mirror is held in the hand. The sun comes from the sky. Tinder originally grows from the earth. From which direction does fire travel to arrive here? Now observe carefully once more. Venerable Ananda, observe again. The fire mirror is held in the hand. The sun is already hanging high in the sky, suspended in the sky. This was our former way of speaking. Tinder itself grows from the ground. One is in a person's hand, one is in the sky, one is on the ground. These three things from different realms. How does fire come from far away, leisurely traveling to arrive here, connecting with them to produce fire? This is very hard to imagine. So if it truly arises through causes and conditions, this observation of arising through causes and conditions can also be spoken of this way. If we examine with reason, actually in all our conventional phenomena, including the relationship between seed and sprout, which originally arose depending on the fire mirror, now we use lighters or fire produced from matches. It's actually a very wondrous kind of causation. Sun and mirror are distant from each other, neither combined nor separate. Firelight should not arise from nothing, because the sun, the distance between the sun and fire mirror is extremely far. Between our mirror on Earth now and the sun, there are so many countless kilometers. It's extremely far. In that case, the combination of these two conditions is impossible. So firelight should not arise from nothing. How could it come without cause or reason? Because the contact between these two, the meeting between these two, how could the causation between these two arise? So this is indeed very difficult to explain with reason. So what is it actually? The true nature of fire below is actually like this. This analysis was also mentioned when discussing the earth element before. You still don't know that in the Tathagata Garbha. The nature of fire is true emptiness. The nature of emptiness is true fire. Pure and fundamental, it pervades the entire Dharma realm. He says, actually, you ordinary beings don't understand this principle at all. Actually, so-called fire exists within the nature of the Tathagata Garbha. It has the nature of fire. This nature of fire is actually emptiness. Such emptiness, when conditions are complete, true fire can emanate and manifest. What is the reason for this manifestation? Because it is pure and fundamental, pervading the entire Dharma realm. Pure and fundamental. Fundamental in Tibetan means natural luminosity. Pure refers to the aspect of natural emptiness. Luminosity is fundamental, meaning this nature of fire, the essence of emptiness, and the natural luminosity. Such conditions pervade the entire Dharma realm. So now, why is it that when conditions are complete, fire can ignite, but the nature of fire cannot be found? What is the reason for this? Actually, our Dharma realm, the Tathagata Garbha, if we want to speak more deeply, it's connected to the Tathagata Garbha and Dharma realm, or we could say luminosity and emptiness are non-dual and indistinguishable. This principle has an inseparable connection. If you don't understand this, no matter how many thousands of words you speak, you still cannot explain it particularly clearly. It's definitely very difficult to be clear. So what we just discussed, we sentient beings don't know that actually form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Or we could say the nature of fire is true emptiness. The nature of emptiness is true fire. This principle means what we call appearance is emptiness. Emptiness is appearance, or luminosity. This principle is the same. Appearance and emptiness are non-dual, or luminosity and emptiness are indistinguishable, and so on. These principles are the same. Such principles follow sentient beings' minds, responding to the measure of what should be known. This nature of fire pervades the entire Dharma realm because it follows sentient beings' minds and should produce various different measures of what can be known. Because we sentient beings, perhaps hell beings, see fire burning their bodies, while heavenly beings see it as the nature of nectar. Or for pure beings, including this fire, it has the nature of father and mother. So generally speaking, when you look at this fire, because each sentient being's conditions are different, it has its own. There's a treatise called On the Nature of Good and Evil by a Han master. In On the Nature of Good and Evil, many principles about earth, water, fire, and wind are explained. For example, if you cultivate virtuous practices in connection with fire, later various direct fruitions will appear. Direct fruition means that depending on fire to yourself, it brings various kinds of light, happiness, and so forth. And also, its circumstantial fruition, the entire environment manifests radiance and 7 jewels, like the Pure Land, depending on the fire element to ripen various pure manifestations. If you cultivate negative actions in connection with fire and produce negative karma, then its direct fruition actually manifests as hellfire, hungry ghost fire, much burning, fire on one's own body, and so forth. As for circumstantial fruition, the environment also manifests various external flames everywhere, including all of us here present. Our experiences of earth, water, fire, and wind are different. For some people, fire is quite beneficial for nourishing your body as well as for eating this food, everything a bit warm, including our light. This lamp brings you this kind of warmth, joy, happiness, radiance. But some people with different karma might find that fire brings you this kind of high blood pressure, for example, or depending on the fire element, brings you fever or high temperature. And also regarding lamplight, some people's eyes simply cannot handle it when the lights are turned on. This is the fire element. The same fire element, but the happiness and suffering it brings you is related to our karma. Here he says, following sentient beings' minds, this essence of fire actually exists within the Tathagata Garbha. It is non-dual luminosity and emptiness, but according to sentient beings' karma, what manifests before them and the conditions that bring happiness and suffering are indeed different. So it's very important that the fire element brings everyone happiness. Of course, this is probably related to the virtuous and negative actions we create. I was thinking that in these past few years, the electricity at our institute has been quite manageable. Previously, regarding the fire element, we still had to work very hard, collecting yak dung, gathering twigs. I see now you all have it slightly easier, perhaps. Of course, to use the fire element, you need money. Electric stoves, eating, many things. Some people have conditions that are too good. Microwave ovens, electric stoves, induction cookers, gas, all kinds of things. One person has all kinds of conditions. Compared to when we first came to the Institute, indeed, our kerosene lamps back then, our greatest happiness was when there was still a little bit of kerosene in the kerosene bottle. When the kerosene in the bottle slowly went down, the fire element's light would be gone, and we were still quite miserable. We had to walk to the county town to buy it and carry it back. Now here at our place, even just going to the shop to buy things is quite painful. People actually sometimes seem to be able to adapt to whatever their conditions bring. If there's no light for just one night, why is there no light? Why? What's the reason for this? You volunteer workers, these electricians, why don't you fix it properly? Actually, sometimes we really need to cherish things, especially I hope some of our Dharma friends, whether it's public lights or these things, we must cherish them. Like when I went to Singapore before, for example, if you're doing something in the kitchen and then return to the bedroom here, immediately they'd say, hey, the kitchen light isn't turned off, the light isn't turned off. Here on our side, it seems like at night several empty rooms have all their lights on. Actually, this is very wasteful. You should turn on the kitchen light when you go to the kitchen. Then when you leave the kitchen, you should turn off the light, including when you use the yak dung shed, bathrooms and such. Some people here seem to have no concept of conservation. Singapore, I don't know how it is now, was previously one of the 4 Asian tigers, but they still place great importance on this. Many Western countries are also like this. So we, including in the assembly hall and many other electrical appliances that you yourself use, when you're not using them, you must turn them off. Otherwise, our monastic community every year indeed, including electricity costs, last year our electricity bill ended up costing several million. Resolving this problem in the end also took a very long time to negotiate. So whether it's electricity or many other aspects, we should realize these things don't come easily. Like the high voltage electricity for our entire Gaze prefecture, the entire state grid, actually in the construction process, I heard the leaders at that time report that every year many people died because they were doing that work in the mountains, relatively high-risk engineering work. During this engineering work, by the roadside, we can also see some donkeys and mules carrying cement and steel bars. It's also very difficult for them. Now, when we're in class, we don't need to use our own lamps, or when we read books and memorize at night, we don't need to be like the great masters of the past who lit a bit of incense or a bit of butter lamp to read. You turn on the light and take it completely for granted. Actually, these things are also not easy to come by, especially regarding the light at our institute now. Our volunteer workers here truly spent 6 or 7 years. A while ago I asked, there's still a bit of finishing work later. Our volunteer workers here also discussed this together a while ago to see what could be done. In our central area, some individual projects aren't completed. We probably need to continue with this. Now basically, except for some special situations, basically all our voltage is very stable, and our wiring and such, previously with our electricity, if you used any higher powered electric stove inside or electrical appliance, immediately the fuse would break right away. Now what we're using should be called relatively good, including the entire wiring, switches, and the entire inside and outside high voltage and low voltage electrical poles. Overall now it's manageable. When designing it, we were also worried whether it would be unattractive or unsafe and so on, but overall now it's manageable. So the fire element in the ultimate sense doesn't exist, but conventionally, following sentient beings' minds, each of us still makes use of it. The Buddha tells Ananda, you should know that worldly people, holding a mirror in one place, produce fire in one place. Seeking throughout the Dharma realm, it arises throughout the world. He says we worldly people should understand that when someone holds a fire mirror and faces it toward the sun, fire can be produced there in the world. Then, seeking throughout the Dharma realm, what is the reason for this? Throughout this Dharma realm, if we seek, when Master Hanshan explains, seeking throughout the Dharma realm, he uses grasping to mean seeking. Because throughout the Dharma realm, there actually is the nature of fire. When we access this, fire can actually be produced throughout the entire world. This entire world, throughout the whole Dharma realm, all have the nature of earth, water, fire, and wind. And in that case, anywhere in the entire world, these conditions can exist. Arising throughout the world, how could there be fixed locations? Throughout this world, how could there be fixed locations? Here there's fire, here there's no fire. Actually, there aren't any. In any place, when conditions are complete, it can arise. Just like we humans, within the Tathagata Garbha there is much wisdom. So even the most foolish person, if you teach them English, Japanese, Tibetan, Chinese, or any kind of technique or skill, they'll learn at least something. Because within their Tathagata Garbha there are such resources. For the same reason, within our Dharma realm, this nature of earth, water, fire, and wind, this nature exists. So in any place, as long as conditions are complete, the fire element can arise. Just like we sentient beings, each of us now, as long as conditions are complete, when virtuous conditions are complete, virtuous fire can appear. Just like at Larung Gar now, when good conditions are complete, everyone can enjoy electric lights. If we have some negative conditions that are complete, fires might occur, or it might become the fire of hungry ghosts that burns internal organs, or the fire of hell realms that burns inside and out. This is possible. So anywhere is possible. You see, here it also says, arising throughout the world, how could there be fixed locations? What's the main point? Following karma, it manifests. According to sentient beings' karma, it manifests. Following sentient beings' virtuous karma, the fire element brings you happiness and light. According to your negative karma, the conditions of the fire element become what makes you suffer, unhappy, and burns you. Therefore, worldly people in their ignorance are confused, thinking it arises from causes and conditions or naturally. Actually, these are all conceptual fabrications of consciousness. This is what results from our conceptual mind's delusions. But there are verbal expressions, all without real meaning. As long as you have verbal expressions, as long as you open your mouth to speak, it's actually very difficult to express this with language. The true nature of fire, free from the 4 extremes and 8 elaborations, cannot possibly be described or expressed with language and conceptual thinking. Its true nature is like this. So the Buddha tells Ananda, the true fire is like this. You can't express it, and I can't express it either. But temporarily, before sentient beings deluded conceptual minds, we can also say that it arises through causes and conditions. This can be said. Or that it arises naturally. This can also be said. Not natural can also be said. Not through causes and conditions can also be said. You can say it anyway. But actually the nature of the fire element is like this. This is the analysis of the fire element. Now let's also analyze the water element. This doesn't seem too difficult either. Basically, the logical reasoning is all the same. The Buddha tells Ananda, water's nature is unstable. Its flowing and stillness are impermanent. Because water's nature is actually not fixed, its flowing and stillness are not constant. Why do we say this? Because we all know that water, no matter what kind of water, definitely cannot be permanent. It cannot exist permanently. He gives an analogy below. Several sages, like in the city of Shravasti, the sage Kapila. Kapila is said to be a yellow red-haired non-Buddhist with yellow red hair. Among non-Buddhists, those with yellow red hair, there's a kind of non-Buddhist sage like this. There's also one called the sage Kakra. The sage Kakra is called round wheel. The earlier one might refer to physical appearance. This one is like a round wheel. They think the entire universal world is all one round thing, complete. So their viewpoint analyzes it this way. There's also a sage called Padma. Padma is called lotus pool. He lived and practiced beside lotus pools, so he's called Lotus Pool, also called the sage Padma. There's also one called Hasada. Hasada is called the water-serving sage, meaning he lived and practiced by the seashore and riverside. These sages and others, great illusionists seeking lunar essence to mix with magical medicines. These illusionists, these magical masters, when they seek water, what do? Lunar essence, not solar essence. Here, lunar essence should be depending on the moon. The lunar should be the moon's essence, this moonlight. And magical medicines for use, these two need to be combined to begin seeking water. These masters on the bright moon day hold the water crystal in their hands, receiving water from the moon. These masters on the bright moon day should be the 15th day when the moon is full, then they hold the water crystal in their hands. The water crystal is this kind of vessel. Zhu means pearl. The water crystal means a water essence pearl for drawing water. Earlier we relied on the sun with the fire mirror. This water crystal also refers to a type of vessel for drawing water with its help. This should be called the water crystal. It seems Nan Huaijin wrote, the pearl of the water crystal. His pearl also has that pearl should be a water essence pearl. In this, seeking water from the moon, of course we might accept the phenomenon of seeking fire using sunlight. This phenomenon we can accept. But this one might be at that time, because there were many who relied on illusionists. Relying on illusionists also had this phenomenon of seeking water. Now, it's not very common seeking water using moonlight. Although the moon has water nature and the sun has fire nature, this is what our astrology and many texts, including the I Ching, say. But coolness exists. Whether there's actual flowing water, perhaps when conditions are complete, there should be. So the meaning is, he didn't say all people, perhaps illusionists relying on various illusions, relying on this water pearl, and then under moonlight, can produce water from the moon's essence. However, today's scientists and many analysts now can create through various conditions. This is also not an impossible phenomenon, because we don't understand, oh, this is impossible. We can't say that. We haven't seen it ourselves. Oh, it's impossible. We can't say that. So although I haven't seen the phenomenon of drawing water from a water essence pearl facing moonlight, I haven't seen this phenomenon, but it should exist. Does this water come from the pearl, or is it produced from the pearl we just mentioned, or from space, or from the moon? Then the Buddha tells Ananda, if you say it's produced from the moon, it can still make the pearl produce water from a distant place. All the forests and trees it passes through should also flow. He says if it's produced from the moon, then moonlight from a distant place makes water come out of your pearl. The pearl should refer to the water essence pearl we just mentioned. If water can come out from inside it, then when moonlight passes through forests and vegetation at this time, why is it that if water can flow from the pearl earlier, then then when passing through vegetation and gardens, there should also be flowing. Water should be able to flow. If water flows, then why wait for what the water crystal just produced? If it's from the moon or all those forests and gardens produce water, then why do you need to depend on what the water crystal produces? If you say it doesn't flow, then clearly water doesn't descend from the moon. Then you should understand that this water doesn't descend from the moon. The final conclusion is like this. This is the first point. If it appears from the moon, that's unreasonable. Then if it appears from the pearl, then this pearl should always flow with water. If it comes out from the pearl because it has the nature of water, in that case, after having this pearl, water should always be able to flow. Why wait for midnight under the bright moon day? Why keep waiting for the night of the 15th day when the moon is full for it to appear? There's no need. This is the second aspect of observation. The third aspect is examining space. Does water appear from space? If it arises from space, space is boundless, so water should be limitless. If you say it's produced from emptiness, then emptiness is boundless, so water should also be boundless. If water is boundless, from humans to gods, all would be drowned alike. If space is boundless and water is also boundless, from the human realm up to the god realms, all material worlds and sentient worlds would all be submerged by water, because space is boundless, without limits. In that case, wherever space pervades, water also pervades. Where water pervades, our human world would all be submerged by water, appearing like a great flood. How then, in that case, why distinguish between water, land, and space? Three aspects. Places with water are called water areas. Places without water are called land, and there's also space. Why are there such distinctions? You observe more carefully. The moon travels through the sky. The pearl is held in the hand. The water basin to receive the pearl is arranged by people. From which direction does water flow and pour here? Now you need to observe carefully, Ananda. You need to observe carefully. The moon travels through the sky. The pearl is in your hand. And the water basin that holds the pearl, some people begin preparing with basins. In that case, how does water pour here, flow and pour into this place? The meaning is that the moon is in the sky. The water essence pearl is in some people's hands. And if water is to flow down below, there might be people specifically holding basins. At this point, Master Yuanying says here, people refers to the illusionists, but some commentaries also say it originally refers to people who are prepared, holding this basin in preparation, getting ready. There are also such explanations. The meaning is, you observe carefully, the moon is in the sky, the pearl is in people's hands, and then some people hold basins, bring water, woo! And they keep preparing. Actually, if these different separate conditions, how does water flow here from any direction? This is fundamentally impossible. When examined with reason, it's impossible. Actually, we originally used water and fire to explain this, but now we indeed use sound, video, and many other things, including television and movies. These conditions are very wondrous. As long as they're complete, they can manifest. But when truly examined with reason, there's also no way. Previously, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche often taught tantric teachings. When teaching, often later his eyes couldn't see, so he held a tape recorder in his hand. Because his teaching voice was recorded on cassette tapes, then it was given to him. When His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche went abroad, he had a small recorder for many years of teaching. Later I obtained it, and after obtaining it, I've now placed it in the memorial hall for His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche at Dromang Monastery. Those cassette tapes were also very small. Often His Holiness would hold this recorder and say, "Look, put something in here." At that time, there was a singer in Qinghai called Debai. Later, he also died. He said Debai's singing voice, and Debai is a person living in Qinghai, but here the sound comes out. Sometimes when His Holiness gave empowerments or taught some pith instructions, he'd play Debai's Tibetan songs. Listen to this. See, the singer is over there, but the sound is here. How does this little box gather and collect the sound? How do these conditions arise? This is called wondrous conditions. With causes it arises, without causes it ceases. The principle is just like this. His Holiness at that time often used that, sometimes a small recorder to teach. Here it's also like this. For example, what we call water. Now the water at our institute is a big problem. A couple days ago I went to understand the situation. Originally we had one pipeline managed on our side, and they had one pipeline managed on the monks' side. They were divided several years ago. As a result, their management was poor and everything got blocked. Our side is relatively manageable, but now it's still not working. You see, in the third phase apartments and first and second phase apartments, sometimes this water element, no matter how complete the conditions are, it won't flow out. Many Dharma friends are a bit discouraged. I don't know what to do. I see we still have some individuals here who understand water engineering. Although you're all working very hard, perhaps we need to think about it more. With so many monastics, I'm quite worried about our water element in the future. When conditions are always complete, it exists within the Tathagata Garbha. But when our karma manifests, the water from the Tathagata Garbha in some places consistently won't flow out. In some places, like near Dragon Spring, the water from the Tathagata Garbha can still manifest. But in some places, it seems there's water in the morning, but none in the afternoon. These apartments of ours were actually quite decent. The conditions in all aspects are relatively complete, but the water element often causes trouble. Originally, for our first and second phases, we held many meetings a while ago, planning to have something nearby, planning to make a water storage, large stainless steel water storage tank. But this also requires considering many problems. So for human survival, sometimes it's indeed true that some people's water from the Tathagata Garbha can flow out at any time. Sometimes people's water from the Tathagata Garbha not only won't flow out, but sometimes it's unclean. All kinds of situations. What I mean is, let's see if our Dharma friends here, you all are, although there are individuals, including some individual Dharma friends here, who are still continuously putting in manpower and financial resources, but sometimes the results continue to seem to get worse and worse. At our institute now, if there are more people, in the future perhaps, in many aspects of practice, daily life and management, now we're still relatively manageable. At least some individuals among us are continuously working hard on matters big and small. Once these become impermanent, I don't know what will happen, but this should also have its conditions. In the words of my perfect teacher, it says there are indeed many similar expressions. From where does this water element come? Moon and pearl are distant from each other, neither combined nor separate. The moon and water essence, pearl, the distance between these two is so far, neither combined nor separate. Water essence should not exist from nothing. You still don't know that in the Tathagata Garbha, the nature of water is true emptiness, the nature of emptiness is true water, pure and fundamental, it pervades the Dharma realm. This principle should be the same. So I see that what we used before applies to the water aspect. Following sentient beings' minds, responding to the measure of what should be known. Below, the story of Moonlight Youth will be explained. In the Shurangama Sutra, there's still much discussion of this aspect later. Holding the pearl in one place, water appears in one place. Holding this water essence pearl in one place, water can appear in that location. What is the reason for this? Seeking throughout the Dharma realm, arising throughout the Dharma realm. As long as this nature exists throughout the Dharma realm, when we seek this way, then throughout the Dharma realm, anywhere is possible. There are ways. As long as the water nature within your Tathagata Garbha, when these conditions ripen, even dry land is possible. Even in the desert, water can flow out. If your Tathagata Garbha's water has dried up and this cause doesn't exist, wherever you go might be arid. There are indeed differences. Even within one world, there are still differences. For example, in one building, if one person's conditions are good, their water flows continuously. If one family's conditions are bad, no matter their water pipes, actually we should learn to fix water pipes ourselves. Learn it yourself too. Don't always say, fix my water, fix my electricity for me, as if others are unconditionally serving you. You yourself should also. Previously, when all the fuses here burned out, I always had many fuses twisted together for convenience. After one burned out, I'd take out another one and connect it. I fixed the electricity myself. Where would there be people to serve you in the future? You should still handle things well yourself. Otherwise, those few volunteer workers, indeed some professional staff, are also working very hard. They also need to sleep, need to practice, need to study and contemplate. They didn't come here specifically to work for you. Arising throughout the world, how could there be fixed locations? Following karma, it manifests. No matter where, if there are the conditions of this karma, it will manifest. Worldly people in their ignorance are confused, thinking it's due to causes and conditions or natural. These are all conceptual fabrications of consciousness, but there are verbal expressions, all not true meaning. This meaning seems relatively clear. We can apply the pattern. All right, let's stop here for today.
Sonandai tamsa rubaya tonani jana pasi jirgana jirano chupai jupun sonen droa
Bandar Badna Sadarda Bandar Badna Sadarda Bandar Badna Sadarda